Well, hey there, Robert Fithen here, you there, and we've been living in 1983 for months. Now, isn't it nice and cozy here? Isn't this nostalgia just so dreamlike? Thank you for continuing on this long journey through the albums of 1983, going chronologically and just reviewing and rating a lot of them. Oh, a whole lot. I did not lie at the beginning when I said there was going to be a lot, and you've realized that at this point, but you've kept with me on the journey, and I absolutely appreciate your time with this. This you could have watched an episode of Seinfeld or something like that, or One Day at a Time, but instead you're checking out my 30-minute videos every 4 or 5, 6 days or whatever. So thank you so much for doing that, and here we are again in November of 1983. Okay, now it's time to talk about some synth pop with the band Real Life and their debut album Heartland. These guys coming from Melbourne, and they'd been knocking around the club scene in Melbourne for a while. Got kind of a following, opening for some of the more popular acts from that area, and made a name for themselves, and got the attention of a record producer. Finally was able to put out their first full-length album after about 3 years or so. And this contains the huge hit Send Me an Angel. That is track number 1, not only becoming a hit in 1983, but then again with the big remix in 1989. I definitely prefer the 1983 version. That's the one I used to see the video for, with the kind of the vampire thing going on or something like that, or the werewolf or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was only on for a while. These guys seemed to be there, have that song. It was everywhere. The video was on all the time on Friday night videos and a couple of the local video shows, and then they kind of went away, and then they came back with the same song 6 years later. So they did have another single on here called Catch Me I'm Falling, which was, that was around for like 2 weeks and then went away. It's a really good one too. This album starts off really strong. I'm not the biggest synth pop 80s fan, but if you're going to do 1983, there's going to have to be some synth pop in there. And so for what it is, this is a pretty good album. And like I said, it starts off really, really strong with those two songs, best two songs on here. And then you got other tracks on here that are nice. They're nothing on here is skippable. I don't think. I think this is for synth pop. They keep it pretty interesting throughout. Different tempos, different arrangements, full melodies, not just beeps and bloops and that kind of thing. So fully realized songs on here, especially the song Always on side 2, and the final track on here, Burning Blue, pretty good as well. The opening track on side 2, Broken Again, has that sound, and I know I can't really make that sound with my mouth very well, and really so this really do it justice. So this is the sound I'm talking about. That sound was in all kinds of songs in 1984 and 1985. So these guys were on the forefront of that, cutting edge of the sound. So yeah, I'm sure other bands probably did that in 83, maybe some even in 82. That would be a good thing to find out. What was the first band to do this? Because that sound came up over and over again. I don't know if that was a presetting on like a keyboard, or you actually had to put different things together to come up with that particular sound and people just copied it. But it seemed like everybody that did that sound in a song, it would just come out of nowhere and it would be the exact same sound. So I'm pretty sure that's some sort of, I don't know, some sort of Eventide preset or whatever they're using. But yeah, a solid album all the way through, especially considering synth pop. I am grading on a curve, remember? So I will go out on a limb and actually give this 4 stars. Real Life Heartland, for what it is. I mean, I do like the hard rock 4-star albums more, but for what this is, synth pop, it's a pretty great album from a band that, not a lot of people think about, I don't think. I mean, these guys were around for a couple of albums back to back, and then they go away, and they come out with another album 7 years later. They go away. They come back with another album 10 years later, and their most recent album just came out in 2020. Alien Sex Fiend is one of those groups I always saw on stickers and buttons. You'd always see Alien Sex Fiend. I always wondered how many of those people that would have those stickers and buttons and I guess posters sometime actually ever heard Alien Sex Fiend, because they were definitely one of those bands, I think, where you had to buy the tape or the record to hear them. They certainly were not on the radio, as far as I ever heard, at least in the U.S., and they were not on the broadcast video shows. I don't know if they were on MTV or... They may have been on Night Flight, Remember Night Flight? I was not, I did not have access to Night Flight in 1983. That did not come into my house until later. But yeah, Alien, Sex Fiend, kind of this goth dance type of thing. A little bit of Bauhaus kind of sound. But they're a little more, I think they take themselves a little less seriously. They're a little more, got a little more of a punk kind of snotty attitude. Young, loud and snotty attitude, I guess you'd say. But yeah, so Alien, Sex Fiend, I mean, with a name like that, you know, Bauhaus sound, the name sounds like they're arty. They appreciate art and they're serious and they're really, you know, Alien, Sex Fiend. And then all the band members, their last name is Fiend. So yeah, they're not taking themselves too seriously. And the fun comes through. It's a fun album. You know, a little ahead of the curve. 1983, they've got the whole like industrial sound going on. They got the whole like, you know, a little bit of a late 80s, early 90s kind of wax tracks thing on a few songs. It is one of those albums. By the way, I never mentioned the name of the album. It's called Who's Been Sleeping in My Brain. And it is one of those where the UK version is different than the American version. Now, for a lot of these albums, when that happens in this long 1983 deep dive, I've been listening to the US version because as butchered as it sometimes is and questionable as it is, that would have been the one that I would have had access to in 1983. But this time I went with the UK one because the US one is just completely inaccessible unless you actually have it. You can't really stream it. And so I went with the UK version. I think it's probably better anyway. You know, obviously how the band intended, as the UK versions usually are. And it starts off with 2 live tracks, if I'm not mistaken. Are they live on the actual record? The first one, I Wish I Was a Dog, 7 minutes long. It doesn't seem like it though. It really gets you in the idea of what they're going for here. You know, fun, kind of punkish kind of sound with the industrial thing going on. And you know, was is spelled W-O-Z. You know, that's punk. And so yeah, Wish I Was a Dog. But they go in a few different places on here. This Wig Wham Wipeout is like this tribal kind of cultural appropriation where but it's got this, you know, pulsating like club beat going on to it as well. She's My Frankenstein. So glad that they're using Frankenstein properly as the scientist and not the monster. So thumbs up for that with the title. I Am a Product starts off a little more eerie, but then goes into this more of like dance beat type of thing. They got the 808s on a couple of tracks here. You know, that 808 drum machine, they're not afraid to throw that on, and sounds a little more disco, you know, like the beginning of Heart of Glass from Blondie. They got that whole thing going on here. Other tracks like Ignore the Machine are just absolute slam fests where they crank it up a little bit, a little more intense. You got Black Rabbit at the very end, which is just a complete, you know, they just open the barn doors and just let it all the animals come out. So this has got a little bit of a different, you know, a little bit of variety going on here. They go in a few different directions, but it's mostly that goth, industrial, club, punk, you know, that slash kind of sound for these guys. New Christian Music is another track on here where they basically just say New Christian Music over and over again, but you just can't help but move. You know, you just want to put on your trench coat and your black eyeliner and your, you know, you want to iron your hair because you're goth. But yeah, so Alien, Sex Fiend. It's another one of those bands whose name I heard a lot. Like I said, saw them on the buttons, saw them on the stickers and whatever, but never really heard them. And this was some fun here. This is what this was. It probably didn't seem as fun in 1983. It probably seemed more challenging and scary and wow, way out, and whoa, that's weird. But now it's just like, oh, that's cool. They're having fun. So I'm going to give this 4 stars. Who's Been Sleeping in My Brain? It was their debut album from Alien, Sex Fiend. So a couple of albums were released on November the 14th, 1983. And here is one that I have on not only a record, but the cassette. You know, got this first, and then the CD. So obviously I really like this album. This is Eurythmics and Touch, their second album. The second album also, or this is their third album, but it's the second album they would release in 1983. So yeah, they are on top of their game here. Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart, the duo that just so visually striking. Such great synth pop. It's beyond just synth pop. I love the, you know, the stuff with her just complete intense and incredible vocal. It really just goes together very well, especially considering it's the early 80s. This is the one that has my favorite Eurythmics song, and that is Here Comes the Rain Again. That is an absolutely striking, beautiful song. The arrangement, the vocal, the lyrics, everything on that song just absolutely works. And then you put the music video into it that I first saw on Friday Night Videos, and it just goes so... I don't know of another music video where the music video, the visuals just go so well with the song. It's exactly what I would imagine, her by the sea and just this lonely seaside thing with the waves rocking up on the shore, and then the mysterious, her walking around with that lantern, and Dave Stewart there with the video camera being just creepy and whatever. I mean, the whole thing just absolutely works. And Here Comes the Rain Again is an absolutely beautiful, incredible song. Regrets is after that. The kind of, after a striking song like that starts it off, and it's like, whoa, blown away. Things ease up a little bit with Regrets, but still a pretty intense lyric in that, with her fist colliding with your furniture. Right by your side is just this fun sort of, street party kind of thing with the whistles and the, steel drums and whatever going on. It was a single. It didn't do as well as the other two singles on here, but I always enjoyed that one. It's basically just a fun song, kind of lightening things up a little bit. Cool Blue is after that. That's the one where it's just this really cool blue kind of song. I think Cool Blue is a good description for that song. The Color Fools You. It's this sort of minimalist type of synth pop thing. And then Who's That Girl is after that. And talk about a wild video with Annie Lennox doing the drag thing. She is the man, she is the woman, and then they kiss each other in the end of the video because, Dave Stewart is the guy, the boyfriend that's running around with all of these, tarts. And one of them, I think, was the guy from Dead or Alive, right? Pete Burns? I think so. I think he was in that. But yeah, Who's That Girl? I actually prefer the single version that fades out. The one in here goes on a little long with this kind of grating effects at the end of it. The first cut starts off side 2. It's okay. Aqua, though, that's the one where it's like, don't talk to me ever again. Don't touch me. She brings back her intense vocal. It's just called Aqua. And, No Fear, No Hate, No Pain, No Broken Hearts is probably my least favorite on here. It's just, it's all right. It's kind of goofy with the arrangement. No fear, no hate, no pain. I'm not a big fan of that. But then Paint a Rumor is just such a great closer to this. 8 minutes long, and it's this total keyboard-oriented, just this total atmospheric, yet very striking ending to this with the... it sounds very European, for sure, but Paint a Rumor. Excellent closer on this. Minimalist, but still very much atmospheric, if that makes sense. But yeah, this has Here Comes the Rain Again, so we're already 5 stars with that, but a lot of great other songs on here as well. Definitely another 5-star album from Eurythmics, just like I started off with this series with their Sweet Dreams album. I like this one even more. I'm not sure what she's doing on the cover there, but Dave Stewart has been... he's been relegated to just the inner sleeve. But yeah, so Eurythmics Touch, excellent example of how you can be, just be synth pop, but synth pop doesn't have to be disposable and, just kind of, sweet candy type stuff. It can actually have some personality and some intensity as well. ABC is a band that I was somewhat familiar with, basically their hits, but I had never heard a full ABC album all the way through. November 14th, 1983, they released their second album called Beauty Stab, and I'm listening to this, and it is not what I expected. Now, like I said, I'm familiar with ABC's hits. I've had this compilation since the 90s, absolutely ABC, with all the hit singles on it and more. And the 2 songs from Beauty Stab that are on here are That Was Then, But This Is Now, and SOS. By the way, this is right next to ABBA in my CD collection. They also have a song called SOS. I wonder how many times that happens. But anyway, so absolutely ABC was, I'm familiar with the hits. But this is not what I was expecting. This is more of a guitar-driven album. They've got like actual meaty guitar hooks going on in here. Then the big strings come in, I always assumed they were like one of the, the romantic era, with the hairdo and the, suave kind of style, and you know, that kind of thing, and the slender microphone, I still remember that. They do a little bit of soulfulness, just a touch here and there, like the song When Smokey Sings, all about Smokey Robinson. But there's none of that here. Well, there's a little bit of that here. Like the song SOS kind of sounds more of what I expected from ABC. And like I said, it's on this CD. So this CD sounds, you know, like the ABC that you know and love all the way through. The Beauty Stab album is not like that. It's just rock guitar and, you know, but it doesn't sound like it's really suited for them. They sound kind of out of their element, which is a recurring theme with the albums that I'm doing in this particular video as I go chronologically through 1983. Bands that are either out of their era, artists out of their era, out of their element, trying things that don't suit them, and that's kind of ABC. Now there are, like I said, there are some nice guitar riffs that pop up here and there, but they quickly disappear. Most of these songs, they don't work. It's not, I guess, is it the way I would put it? They just don't work, and they're not memorable. I've listened to this CD, or this release, 3 times, and the song, I'm hearing the album all the way through the second time, and I'm not even remembering hearing it before. I'm hearing it through the third time. I'm not even remembering hearing some of these songs 2 other times. So, not memorable. There are a couple of highlights on here. The song Unzip is pretty cool. That's when they get the closest to making this particular ABC, like I said, more of the rock sound. They get closer to making that actually work. The Power of Persuasion, kind of more in that vein too. It almost gets there, but the lyrics are way too repetitive and kind of vacant. There's the song United Kingdom at the very end, which definitely slows things down and is more of an acoustic type thing with just some strings, and it's more political. It's what's going on in the UK at the time. I'm not really familiar, but I get a sense of what they're singing about, you know, because they're very explicit about it. But overall, I'm going to give this 3 stars. I think I appreciate the ambition. I appreciate that the second album, they're trying something completely different than the songs that I'm at least familiar with. I don't know what the album tracks on albums like The Lexicon of Love sound like, but I know what the hits sound like. I don't sound like this, so I appreciate them going in a different direction already with album number 2. Sometimes they get close, like I said, but overall they're not quite getting there. It sounds like a band that is trying something that, again, is just not suited for them. On November 14th, 1983, we get something new from the band Chic. Or I should say the production team Chic and their vocalists. Yeah, so this is called Believer. And I had never heard this album before. I mean, I'm all about the Chic from the 70s. Grew up on those great disco hits that they had, especially like La Freak and Everybody Dance and Dance, 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 Yowza, 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 you know, all the good ones. But I've never heard this album before, and I've never actually seen this album before. That does not look familiar to me at all. So this was, this was their last for quite a while. They didn't have a new album until 1992, Chicism, which I actually reviewed in my series of 1992. And I liked a lot of that more than I like this. This sounds like they're just kind of running out of gas at this point, and they're just kind of out of their element, out of their era. The very first song is the title track. They do have a line in there where they talk about, you know, dancing head to head and toe to toe. We're going to be strong like Mr. T. So making Mr. T references. He was huge in 1983. So they're with the times, man. And then the next one, they talk about, you know, unlike Clark Gable, I do give a damn. So that's really hip and cool for 1939. I get it. They've talked about old movie stars like Fred Astaire and whatever in their 70s hits too. But here it just sounds, I don't know, the kind of the dreamy, kind of aloof vocals that they have all the time. They really went with that breezy disco sound. But here with this hard electro funk, it doesn't really gel. And it's not a good contrast either. You know, the song I was just talking about with the Clark Gable reference is called You Are Beautiful. Is it You Are Beautiful? You are beautiful. You are beautiful. And it's got like a little bit of a robot kind of thing going on. Not great. Not the cool 80s robot. Just that kind of chic vocal where we're not going to write a lot of lyrics. We're just going to... roller skates, good times. You know, that kind, but the good times is a lot better. But basically what I'm saying, like I said, it just sounds like they're just running out of ideas, running out of gas. They're out of their era. And it's kind of sad to hear. I mean, they do, like I said, they try some new kind of current things. They got a rap song on here with that early 80s rap called Everybody Party, or Party Everybody, or not to be confused with Everybody Dance. So still trying to do some old tricks and mix it. It's like, you know what this album is like, trying to teach an old dog new tricks. They got the tricks, they're just not doing the tricks very well. Song on here about how, you know, they got this lover that just comes and goes in the night, you know, gets done with the business and then just leaves, and they want to, you know, sample some of this loving for all the, you know, for all day or whatever, you know, stick around, we can make this, you know, this hookup friends with benefits thing into a real relationship. You know how that's never going to work. Just go find it. If you want a real relationship, go find a dude that's going to want a real relationship. Anyway, I've gone on way too long about this album because it really is just kind of inessential. I'm going to give this 2 stars. They definitely have better albums, and most people would want a Chic greatest hits with the single edits of the big long 8.5 minute dance songs. So yeah, 2 stars. This is kind of forgettable and, like I said, just inessential. But don't feel too bad about, you know, Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards. It's 1983. They just came off producing David Bowie's Let's Dance album and runaway hit with that. So I'm thinking that maybe that's where they put their good ideas. That's where they put a lot of their effort. And this album sounds more like, you know, kind of like a side thing, kind of like an afterthought. We are halfway through November 1983. It is the 15th, and this has just hit the stores. Ozzy Osbourne and Bark at the Moon. Yeah, this is where the popularity of his albums seem to kind of take a dip. Everybody's always talking about the first 2, and it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? Blizzard of Oz and The Diary of a Madman, great, excellent, classic. But this one seems to be kind of not discussed so much, and I really like this one too. It is later in the 80s, so the keyboards are coming in at this point. But they are sort of eerie keyboards. They're kind of scary keyboards. The kind of keyboards you want on an Ozzy Osbourne album if you have to have keyboards on there. Starts off with the incredible song Bark at the Moon. Always been one of my favorite Ozzy songs. One of the first solo Ozzy songs I ever heard. And that video used to get played all the time. And, you know, that cheap-looking made-on-video kind of thing where he turns into, well, this happens right here, as a matter of fact. Turns into whatever kind of werewolf kind of creature. Great album cover on this as well. This was released in the U.S., like I said, on November 15th, but it didn't come out in the U.K. apparently until almost a month later. I wonder what that was all about. I wonder how many people in the U.K. actually got the U.S. version imported just so they could have this album. The UK version is a little bit different. It has the blue lettering here, which I actually prefer. I think it goes better with the blue sky and the night and everything. And then instead of having, I think, Waiting for Darkness is the song that is not on the UK one. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's Waiting for Darkness is replaced by Spiders in the Night, which if you have the US one and you're like, oh man, where's my Spiders in the Night song? You are not missing much. That's not the best Ozzy song ever. It is on this, though. The 1995 CD version has, you know, actually 9 tracks instead of just 8, so it has, you know, the UK and US extra track on there. But US version also in a different running order. Bark at the Moon is first on the US one, and I think the UK one starts off with Rock and Roll Rebel, and the songs are in, you know, all kinds of different order there. But I think this is a great album, but basically is what I'm saying here. You're No Different, excellent. You're no different to me. You know, kind of like Ozzy giving a little pushback to the critics. Same thing with Rock and Roll Rebel. You think I worship the devil? You must be stupid. I'm just a rock and roll rebel. So yeah, cool stuff on here. Now you see it, now you don't. Reportedly written about Sharon Osbourne, and that's another thing too. You got to understand who's writing these songs. It is apparently Jake E. Lee and Bob Daisley writing these, not Ozzy Osbourne, even though he is the one credited. There's a whole story behind that about how Sharon Osbourne allegedly said, no, Ozzy gets all the writing credit. You guys are getting paid off, and if you say anything about it, I'm going to erase your guitar parts, you know, and you're going to be replaced. And, you know, if you know what happened in 2002 with the other 2 albums, you know she had the ability to pull that off, unfortunately. Ridiculous. Anyway, did a whole video about that. But Slow Down is like a hidden track on, it's not hidden, but it's kind of a not very much mentioned track on side 2. I love that song. Slow down. Your haste is making waste. Ooh. So Tired is the one on here that's kind of like, it's a ballad. It's a nice ballad. It's nicely written. Ozzy's vocals are great, as they are on all the tracks in here. But I think the orchestration on that is a little bit overbearing. I don't think we needed to push it up quite that much in the mix. But a lot of great stuff on here. I mean, this is a solid album. Really is. Again, it has more of an 80s feel. You know, we're getting into the mid-80s here. You got the keyboards. You got production on here that's a little boxy sounding as well. Not the best produced, engineered album of Ozzy's career, that is for sure. But I'm going to give it 5 stars because I've always loved it, especially the title track, Bark at the Moon, Slow Down, You're No Different. Those are my 3 favorites on here, and a lot of great other stuff on here as well. Bark at the Moon, Ozzy Osbourne. It looks like the U.S. got a little earlier take on this than the U.K. did, which is very surprising. And if it's been a while since you've seen the Bark at the Moon music video, sometime you need to revisit that, check that out. That's a lot of fun. So how do you follow up talking about being released? Well, you talk about another album that came out on the same day, November 15th, 1983, and that was the new one from John Denver, called It's About Time. Now, I am not a John Denver hater. I've got several of his early albums. I appreciate what he's doing on those. A lot of it, he seems real. He seems earnest and authentic. It's a little light, obviously, but I don't mind John Denver. He seems, he's quietly passionate about the things he's singing about, nature and conservation and, human interaction. And he gets a little bit of society, kind of commentary in there as well sometimes. Singing about passing the pipe around and getting high in the Rockies on a Rocky Mountain high. Now, he does get a little goofy later on with Grandma's Feather Bed and Thank God I'm a Country Boy and shit like that. But I'm talking about the earlier stuff. Some of it's all right. But here, it's 1983, and similar to the Chic album I was talking about earlier, he's kind of out of his time here. He sounds kind of tired. He sounds like he's just kind of... you just want to hear the earlier John Denver. This album starts off with a song called Hold On Tightly. A little bit of a reggae vibe going on in that one because it's 1983. You got to have a little reggae vibe in some of your, in your song. He goes real reggae later on in another track on this album I'll talk about. But this one, it's all about, good spirits and you got to forgive and you got to and no one is to blame, fuck that. Somebody's always to blame. Find out who's to blame. That's how you solve the problem. All this bullshit about, it doesn't matter who's to blame. No one's really to blame. Yes, they are. I cannot stand that sentiment that it doesn't matter who did we can't really blame it. Yes, you can. We're moving on. The next one is just this really sad, tired breakup ballad, and there'll be plenty of those. There'll be plenty. I think he's just broken up with somebody. I don't know what personally was going on with John Denver in 82, 83, but it sounds like he's broken up with somebody. Like I said, this guy's honest. He's authentic. He's earnest, but I don't know. I don't want to hear John Denver being just kind of tired and sad. And that's what these breakup songs on here sound like. And there's like 3 or 4 of them. This one's called Thought of You. There's another one later, I Remember Romance, and there's a couple others on here. After this track, though, there's one called Something About. It's a little more upbeat, Something About You, basically. It sounds more like a Jimmy Buffett throwaway type of thing, but here's where the synths come in. The keyboards are coming in. It's definitely 1983 on this track. The one that he's... going full-on reggae, and it's called World Game. Full-on reggae song. You got John Denver doing reggae. He's going as far as to say like Yawa and Ja and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, wow, John Denver. He's taken the glasses off, by the way, on the front cover there. He no longer has those glasses, so he's going. I'm surprised they have some dreads on or something like that. But final track on here is the title track. It's About Time. And lyrics like, it's about time, it's about change, and it's about time. You just said it was about It's about time, it's about change, and it's about time. And that's like the chorus. He just doesn't say that once. Emmylou Harris comes on about halfway through side 2 with the song Wild Montana Skies. She is very welcome. It's great to hear Emmylou Harris's voice on this because John Lennon? I just called John Denver John Lennon. John Denver, not known for his soaring vocals, you know. He's light. And so it's nice to have Emmylou Harris there actually doing some good singing along with John Denver there with Wild Montana Skies. I think that was the single. I don't know that it did very much. I think it went to country radio because thank God he's a country boy now. But yeah, no, 2 stars. Sorry. But again, just like I said with Chic, if I'm going to listen to John Denver, it's going to be the 70s stuff. This one just doesn't, it's not cutting it. And I get it. He just broke up with somebody. He's sad. The songs sound pitiful. If you've broken up with somebody, or they've broken up with you, really, let's be honest, and you're just pitiful, and you just want to wallow, maybe those songs, because like I said, he's honest, but they're not great songs. They're not. And so, yeah, 2 stars. Sorry, John Denver. He does have a decent song on here about death, though. That's the highlight for me. And it is kind of eerie to listen to, knowing that he'll die, you know, I guess more than just a few years, but he'll die later on, tragically. But he's talking about dreaming about his death and you know, life can come and go in an instant. And that's the highlight on here. The track is called On the Wings of a Dream, but not enough to get this whole album over 2 stars. We'll have some higher up than 2-star albums to talk about in the next video because this video is done. We are done. And we're going to come back. Who is we? Me and my friend in my pocket. I'm going to come back and continue this deep dive into 1983, chronologically going through almost all the albums. No soundtracks, no live albums, no compilations, no EPs, no jazz, no country. Even though I just reviewed John Denver, who I think is a country artist at this point. Aside from that, coming up, next video, I'll talk about albums from Duran Duran, Kool and the Gang, 38 Special, and many more. Hopefully you'll join me for that. Thank you so much for checking out this video and continuing with me on this long ride. It's a road trip. It's a long one through like going across the country 5 times through 1983. I'm Robert Fithen. Hopefully I will talk to you again in the next one.